Bitcoin is. This fantastic set of truth goggles that you can put on and see the world for what it really is. The whole notion of money having a stable value over time is the great lie. It is the great illusion. A lower time preference is all of a sudden worth it. And the day that the nodes aren't in charge anymore is the day Bitcoin dies. I do believe that Bitcoin will win these battles.
Bitcoin is not just about saving in a better money. It's a middle finger to the corrupt system, and by using it, our actions speak louder than words. Here's the thing. What if everything you knew about its power was only half the story? What if the real revolution wasn't just digital scarcity, but the way it rewires our brains to think about value, freedom, and who's really in charge? Today I'm joined by Knut Svanholm, Bitcoin philosopher and prolific author of books such as Everything Divided by 21 Million and Praxiology. I'm playing devil's advocate, hitting Knut with some hard questions and classic FUD. Is Bitcoin's value just some collective hallucination? Can it actually survive a full-on government crackdown? And of course, in a Bitcoin future, who will build the roads? Knut is here to unpack everything and help you navigate those all too familiar conversations with friends still plugged into the fiat matrix. Going beyond Bitcoin to give you the skills and insights you need to escape the fiat matrix, this is Mentor Sessions. Awesome. Well, Knut, thank you so much for joining me today. You know, I was thinking that I really haven't gotten to a good row in a long time as well, too. So I figured maybe we could have a little bit of fun going back and forth. Maybe I'll play devil's advocate on some of the ideas from Praxiology and some of the, maybe the big FUD around Bitcoin. I mean, we could sit here all day doing bits versus sats, but the answer is obviously sats. So there's no point there. And you only need to look at the success of and the popularity of corn in the late 90s to know that a name doesn't matter. Like, you can just be whatever it needs to be and people will adopt it. So there's my...
Oh, you mean the band corn?
Yeah, exactly. The fact that they were as big as they were.
The vegetable corn also had a bit of a peak in the 90s, I think.
So, to get into it, I kind of wanted to just maybe, try and play devil's advocate, challenge you a little bit on a few things, and we'll kind of see where it goes from there. So even just to kick things off, I mean, Knut, I was thinking about this, and isn't it true that, Bitcoin's value is just a shared hallucination between people, right? This is a greater fool's thing, that there's nothing intrinsic, right? There's nothing anchoring the price.
No, there is no such thing as intrinsic value. Value is subjective, and a Bitcoin is worth different things to different people. It has different use cases to different people. And this is true for not only Bitcoin, but for every good and service out there. Prices do not measure value, they signal value. So a monetary unit can never be a ruler, but it is a tool for signaling how much you appreciate something, or how much you will accept for giving something up, or so on and so forth. So a big misconception about money in general is that we think that it's an objective unit of measure. Like even the term unit of account sort of alludes to that. I don't really like the term. I don't like the term store of value either. We can go into that later. But what money really does is signal value, not measure it.
That's very interesting. Okay, well, what issues do you have with store of value? Because, I mean, you could clearly see that Bitcoin's been an amazing store of value, but maybe that's not the case.
I prefer the term medium of exchange over time to a store of value. And the reason for that is that store of value, first of all, valuations are subjective and dynamic. So each person evaluates everything in their life. They make one decision over another and prioritize one thing over another all the time. So value is not something you really can store, because you may value the thing differently at a later date. Also, it is subjective, and other people may value it differently. So the price you see, the ticker price you see on the screen, that's just what the latest Bitcoin sell and the latest Bitcoin purchase was made for in dollar terms. It is not a constant of nature or anything like that. So that's why, and also the term store of value creates this false dichotomy between medium of exchange over time and space. I think a much clearer way of seeing this is that you need both. Like a money cannot be just a medium of exchange over time, and it cannot not just be a medium of exchange over space. So gold, for instance, was a very good medium of exchange over time because it didn't change and it was costly to produce more gold, therefore had a high stock to flow ratio, meaning that it was good at keeping its perceived value over time. In other words, it was a good medium of exchange over time. Paper money or fiat money, and even more so digital money in euros and dollars in bank accounts, are a very good medium of exchange over space, but they lack the time aspect, since they can be diluted at will by bankers and central bankers around the world who can manipulate its value down by printing more of it. And this is not possible with Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is the first time that we have something that can be used as a medium of exchange over time and space, making it finally a good form of money, which is arguably something that humanity never had before.
Okay, but let me just back up for 1 second here. So you said that there were other possible, like it's people can value Bitcoin differently. Would it be fair to categorize that in the ways, because there's no intrinsic value apparently, there's no intrinsic value to Bitcoin, are all the ways that it's being, we'll say, valued subjectively, are all those within the realm of a monetary medium, or is there other use cases for Bitcoin that I'm not thinking of?
No. Introducing other use cases is very dangerous because just as real estate becomes a worse form of housing for people when it's used as a medium of exchange over time, that is a store of value, then its use case as housing goes down. Like so if right now in all the rich areas of the world, the billionaires own all the beachfront property, and regular people can't afford it anymore. And the reason for that is that the asset holds its value better through time, or at least that the billionaire perceives it will. In reality, a house, a building is not a producer good, it's a consumer good. It deteriorates over time and should actually lose its value. And if you measure the world through Bitcoin, or if you view the world through the Bitcoin lens, just as I said before, you can't measure value. But if you see it through a Bitcoin lens, you can actually see that it is losing value. A house that cost 400 Bitcoins 5 years ago is around 5 Bitcoins today. So like, it is losing value. It's just that you're using the wrong denominator. And if money has other use cases than money, for instance, if you clog the time chain with JPEGs and stupid, idiotic tokens that have nothing to do with the internal valuation system of the network, then it becomes a worse medium of exchange. Just as the house becomes a worse habitat for human beings if you use it for the monetary use case, which is hold it over a long time and use it as an asset, basically. So these are two sides of the same coin, pun intended. And therefore, I think the debates around this would be much simpler if we just drop the term store value altogether. But this is my personal opinion.
It's a very interesting opinion, but okay. So, but I gotta get this right. If Bitcoin is a medium of exchange and there's no intrinsic value, so it's purely just a monetary subjective value that we're ascribing to it, wouldn't that mean, because of its volatility, that it's not a good money? If it's only a money and has no other value.
Yeah, that is a good question. I would say that the whole notion of money having a quote unquote stable value over time is the great lie. It is the great illusion. The prices are not supposed to be stable. Prices ought to go down. And so let me ask you this. If you practice doing something, or if any human being practices doing something, do they usually get better or worse at the thing they're practicing?
You just pin me down on that one. They tend to get better unless they're training in a terrible way.
So why aren't all prices going down forever?
Well, the reason that they're not going down forever is because we need to have stable prices, because if we didn't have stable prices, our producers would not be able to project into the future their future revenue and cost.
No, that's simply not true. They still would be able to do that because they could still predict the future. What I'm saying is that all tools and technologies are inherently deflationary. Everything on the free market trends towards its marginal cost of production, meaning that all prices do go down forever. And Bitcoin is the first time we've had a tool to actually see that happening, because we never measured anything like. If we measured the world in Mona Lisas, we would see it too. but to me, that's first and foremost what Bitcoin is. This fantastic set of truth goggles that you can put on and see the world for what it really is.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Well, I was reading through some brilliant takes on Twitter, and it seems to me that at the Bitcoin conference and with the SBR, it's clear that governments and nation states are getting into Bitcoin. They're having to take a position on it. So wouldn't this mean that ultimately Bitcoin's going to be captured, right? Like all the governments, all the whales, they're not going to let their money printer be destroyed. They're not going to allow for that to happen, for that power to be sucked away from them. And so, I mean, realistically, Bitcoin, it couldn't possibly win with all these giant players taking positions.
Well, I disagree. As long as we run our nodes and the point is, you decide what Bitcoin is to you by running whatever software you want in your own home, and accept the Bitcoin if the Bitcoin abides to whatever rules you think are okay. So in this sense, the shitcoins actually have a purpose, because they are, in this sense, they do provide an alternative to Bitcoin. But what I hope will happen, and what has happened in the past, whenever bad ideas are introduced to Bitcoin, is just that people will not adopt them, because they understand the value of Bitcoin as a medium of exchange over space and time, and they also understand that if it's anything else, then it will suffer the same fate as all the other shitcoins. So sooner or later, malicious miners and malicious actors will be thrown off the network. It's as simple as that, because the other people do not want their damn near perfect money to be destroyed by bad ideas. And this is why it's so hard. Why Bitcoin discussions in Bitcoin may seem chaotic to outsiders, because we don't have leaders. That's the whole point. It's supposed to be chaotic. This is how Bitcoin becomes more resilient. So yeah, I do believe that Bitcoin will win these battles. However, I do admit that there's a tiny risk that it doesn't, and that we're fucked, because it will be taken over by whoever the bad actor is. And in a sense, I think events like the Bitcoin conference is confusing people, and that's not a good thing. They should focus on educating people about the right things, and having Justin Sun and Peter Schiff and various politicians there doesn't really help Bitcoin. All it does is confuse people, and then they fall into shitcoin traps, and then they don't touch any quote unquote crypto for 10 years with a 10-foot pole, when they could have been hyper Bitcoin, when they could have been orange pilled instead. So I prefer conferences with a higher signal to noise ratio.
That's not a bad way to go. And even just aside, I think it's maybe something to do with our high time preference culture at this point in time as well too. But I think Bitcoin's supposed to be boring. Even though it's this major transformation, it's supposed to be boring, and people attempting to do more, add the JPEGs. It feels to me like an attack on underlying fungibility. Money is not supposed to be the exciting thing. The exciting thing is maybe the job or the business that you start in order to pursue it. But in and of itself should be yes, it works, and we're moving on to other things at some point.
Yeah, well, discovering that just by not diluting number, you can make purchasing power go up, what people call number go up, when it's really purchasing power go up. And that's super exciting, I think. Like, of course it is. So it doesn't necessarily have to be boring. I mean, to be fair, to comment on this current debate in Bitcoin, I think almost everyone except the spammers themselves don't like the JPEGs and don't like arbitrary data on the chain. And both sides are trying to stop that somehow. It's just that one side is predominantly made up of people who know computers, and the other side is made up of people who know money. And we need to talk to one another because both skill sets are absolutely necessary for the survival of the network. Then again, people can be bribed, people can be corrupt, manipulated, whatever. And in my opinion, the only thing that makes Bitcoin different than other quote-unquote cryptos is that nodes do matter, and nodes are in charge. And the day that the nodes aren't in charge anymore is the day Bitcoin dies. So I don't understand why anyone would ever try to cater to miners, why miner interests are important at all. Miners are just our employees, they are the slaves of the network, not the masters. And people just need to understand that. I think one of the biggest points of confusion is that we've been told for many years that miners create Bitcoin. They don't. They create blocks, and therefore they create block space, and they get paid by the network for doing so in the form of a subsidy and a bunch of fees per block. And the subsidy is Bitcoin that we allow them to give to themselves. It's not they who find them. We allow them to do that whenever they find a block. So that framing is super important.
I agree. I completely agree. And it reminds me of like when they talk about miners not being profitable or the network will lose its security budget and these things, I'm immediately reminded of kind of like the protectionism on like the automotive industry or something as well too. Yeah. It's like, no guys, even miners are businesses that potentially will fail, right? And if the hash rate goes down, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That could be fine.
No, the difficulty adjustment algorithm works both ways. And this is what the system was designed to do, and throw bad businesses off the network. So mining is super competitive, and it's supposed to be. Some of these companies are supposed to die. And furthermore, I think more miners should be actual miners and not just hash salesmen, which they are now, because they sell their hashing power to a pool and they don't even know what kind of block they're mining on. And I think that's super dangerous too. So
completely agree. I feel like these are just some of the, like, it's the anti-fragile kind of argument. Like, we make these mistakes and pools get centralized and we have a whole bunch of hashing, and we unfortunately have to learn that lesson for people to go, okay, there's a reason for me I need to make sure that I'm hooked up to my own node, constructing my own block template, and I'm going to mine on top of that.
Yeah.
Right? That we have to kind of go through the bad times to get to the good times on the other side.
Let me break this down for my fellow Bitcoiners. In just 8 weeks, I've seen a serious shift. More strength, more energy, and fast muscle gains. The reason? FitScript. They ran 124 biomarkers, blood, hormones, inflammation, and built a fully custom plan: nutrition, training, supplements. No guesswork, no templates. This is functional medicine meets precision fitness for high-performing men who want sovereignty over their health. If you care about optimization the way you care about your money, test, don't guess. Don't trust, verify. Hit the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen to check out FitScript and see what's possible.
Are you still delaying taking self-custody of your Bitcoin? Do you feel secure in your current Bitcoin setup? If something were to happen to you, would your stack make it to your loved ones? At Bitcoin Mentor, we've helped thousands of people level up their Bitcoin security and fast-track their understanding. If you find that you simply don't have the time to go through all the books, the tutorials, the guides, you can book a free one-on-one strategy session with myself, Gary, or any of the other great mentors by visiting bitcoinmentor.io. Scan the QR code or simply click the link in the description down below to find out how Ben and the entire expert team at Bitcoin Mentor can help you accelerate your Bitcoin journey. Use promo code BTC Sessions for 10% off. All right, so Another one, I know that we recently had some updates to your book, Praxiology, as well too. And so in my mock sort of setup, I have the favorite libertarian axe to grind. So Knut, I realized in reading Praxiology, you even outright said it, that like with Bitcoin and sound money, that like forms of coercion would not be possible, which would mean that we'd have no taxation. We'd have no taxation, right? How on earth could we possibly have roads?
Yeah, I added the "What about the roads" is now the title of the final chapter of the new book. So Praxiology has had a big overhaul. I mean, if look behind me here, all my books have had an overhaul. We have redesigned the covers and re-edited the books for better readability. This it's still the same content, but Praxiology, we did a bit of a when I say we, I mean Luke the Wolf and me. We did a bit of a deeper edit. So first I re-edited it and added a couple of chapters and put in subheadings and bullet point lists and stuff. It's more of a textbook now, to be honest, but it's I think it's the best it can be, because it was like first written and then edited and then re-edited and then once again re-edited by Luke and me after I re-edited it and added the chapter. So now it's the best it can be. It's like a beef stock that has been meticulously boiled down to its absolute best essence 2 years later. So now I have this 200-page book with beautiful illustrations and stuff, and I'm super proud of it. I don't have a copy yet because it's so new. I have a copy of the old version. It looked like this. The new one has Lady Justice on the cover holding this scale with the apple and the orange. The orange is a certain type of orange. Yeah, I guess I think you can guess which type of orange. Has the same orange color as another famous logo. Anyway, the "What about the roads" thing, the thesis in that chapter is that what anyone posing the question "What about the roads" is not really posing you it's not really asking a question, but admitting Stockholm syndrome. So yeah, because the assumption is that roads are a commodity that that human beings could not manage without coercion, and I think that's super untrue. Like, ask yourselves, like what about the roads now? Do you think the traffic situation in most major cities in the world is a good situation? Like, don't you think this could have been managed better by organically than centrally planned, as it often is? And I think it's obvious that roads are a commodity like everything else that would be better off if it had more competition on the free market and less coercion involved, less central planning.
Well, Knut, I mean, like currently right now we're speaking on computers and great distances away from incredibly complex devices that were manufactured by voluntary actors doing different specialized things. How could we possibly figure out how to put pavement on dirt? I'm not sure how it can work out.
No, and the amazingness of us being able to have this call like across continents without lag and with video and good audio and video quality is just mind-blowing to me still. And the free market did all that. The state intervention is just retarded the process. Yep. By retarded I mean slow down and slowed it down and made it more stupid. So it retarded it in both of the senses of the word. It like no one can construct even a pencil, as Milton Friedman pointed out, on their own. You need materials from all over the world, and there is no coordination mechanism except the price signals. So the less distorted the price signals, the better functioning the free market. And yeah, that's one of the reasons I love Bitcoin, and that's one of the reasons why I love to try to educate people about Austrian economics and human action.
Beautiful. It's funny. I remember, was it a video or was it an article? I read something or saw something on a gentleman who tried to pursue making a toaster from scratch.
Oh yeah, there's a TED Talk.
Is that what it was? Yeah.
He
couldn't even get past, like, he had to give up on trying to refine the minerals. That wasn't going to happen. Refine the ore. And ultimately, I think when he was done, the thing blew up in like 10 seconds.
Yeah. No, so it's impossible for one person to make a toaster. So this is also another thing that people think about libertarians, that we are against collaboration. Like, it's the opposite. Like, we want to remove the barriers to collaboration everywhere. Like, and I say we, I mean I do, because it's individualistic, right? So the fact that we believe in or believers in the free market, you don't really need to be a believer. That's what I'm trying to say here. So you just need to understand a couple of undeniable facts about human action, and the reason that they are undeniable is because trying to refute them proves them. So if I tell you that you own your own body, in arguing against that, you have to prove to me that you do own your own body, or at least that you're in control of it, which is what owning it means in this sense. So you cannot argue against that you control your faculties. It's impossible. It's a logical contradiction, and the entire branch of science that we call praxeology is built around these irrefutable axioms. And when I first encountered that, I was so fascinated by it, because all of a sudden the social sciences, like we were taught in school, you were taught like maths and physics, and that all made sense. None of the social sciences made any sense. It was like, wait, but why every single lesson? And then school bell rang, and you came back the next day with even more questions. But praxeology made as much sense as mathematics from the first time I encountered it, because like, this is pure logic. There's no denying that these things are true. So and that's a point to emphasize too. This is not opinion, not at all. You can prove by deductive. You can use deductive reasoning to come to conclusions about the state and other things that are simply undeniable if you follow the thought all the way back to human action is purposeful behavior. Yeah, so I'm in love with that type of thinking, first principles thinking. I think is the best way to understand how the world works.
I almost feel like it's like, at least for early Bitcoin adopters, like that would you call it? It's like an unsatisfying itch if you can't get down to first principles when you're talking to somebody. I feel like that's almost like a personality quirk of Bitcoiners, at least in the initial kind of core.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
And it's funny, you talk about like mathematics and praxeology. It's they very much have the same underpinnings, right? The basis of mathematics is just logic, and it's the same thing for praxeology.
Yeah, it's axiomatic. That's what it is. The axioms are different. Like saying that two parallel lines never cross is not true for the same reason that you always measure utility at the margin is true. Like the axioms are different, but they have the same type of logical foundation.
So then, if I play devil's advocate, so humans act, and we need to we only have three possible actions, if I'm not mistaken, in the sense that there's speculation, gambling, and engineering, right?
Oh, you've done your homework.
Of course.
Yeah.
I've got, where is it? It's on the shelf somewhere over there. I've got my Mises and my Rothbard, and I was listening to Praxiology in preparation.
And you
yesterday.
got a drum kit too.
I do. Yeah, I got that one high there.
Yes, and more cowbell. Well, you only have one cowbell. We want more cowbell. Got the one.
We want for the floor pedal as well too.
All right, great.
So, if praxeology is deductive reasoning, but it has no predictive powers, and we can only engineer, gamble, or speculate, what value does it have to us if we can't use it for modeling out the future?
Now, this is a very good question. The word economics, in my opinion, the word has been misunderstood for so long, because we have had these schools, quote unquote, schools of economics that think it has something to do with predictive power. Like praxeology very thoroughly sets the limits for tells you the limits for what you can and what you cannot know. So it's a framework for understanding human action. And that's what it is. And that includes all of economics, but it does not make predictions about anything. And that's not what the tool is for. The tool is for understanding, for instance, that if you increase the supply of a monetary good, then that monetary good will have a corresponding decrease in purchasing power eventually. Like, there's no way around that. And also that if you and I decide to exchange two things, that like I give you one thing and you give me another thing or a service or whatever, like we're doing now, we're in a trade right now. Like, you find it valuable to talk to me and I find it valuable to talk to you, because if we didn't, this wouldn't have happened. So like every human interaction that is consensual requires both parties to think that they have something to gain from doing it. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. Now, this is not true for coercive or violent. If there's coercive things or violent things in the equation, then I can, for instance, when I pay taxes, I don't do so because I like to do so. I do so because someone is putting a gun at my head and threatening to take away my liberties if I don't. And you can deductively reason yourself to the position that coercive interactions, a set of coercive interactions, can theoretically yield the same result as the voluntary one, but the chances that they do are infinitesimally small. Like the perceived value someone gets out of a transaction is, of course, higher when people do it voluntarily, and the power of that is very underestimated. One of my favorite examples is a apple tree farmer who has one apple tree, and he can feed so many customers with his apples that he can afford to use the profits to buy another tree next year and sell the double amount of apples, and then buy 2 more trees the year after that, year after that, thereby increasing his business exponentially year by year. So 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, and so on and so forth. This exponential growth cannot happen if he's taxed to 50%. He never gets to the second tree. If his tax burden is 50%, he never gets to the second tree. So we have all of these exponential growth scenarios that we never see. We live in a world where taxes are everywhere and inflation is everywhere. So we don't see how we don't see the timeline we don't live in, and that is a tragedy because we could have had it so much better. Yeah.
But Knut, I hear them screaming off in the distance. If we had a sound money and we didn't have the ability to tax, right? How could we possibly ever deal with emergency situations? I mean, even in an anarchist society, there would still be hierarchies. There would still be voluntary authority given to some people. Wouldn't we need to give those people the authority to act in the collective will in order to deal with emergencies, with war? What about war, Knut?
And why wouldn't we be able to do that voluntarily? People do buy insurance policies, don't they? So why should insurance policies be collectivized? And the emergencies we've had, like over the last decade, for instance, a couple of weeks ago here in Spain, we had a blackout, not locally. The entire peninsula and Spain and Portugal were out of power for 12 hours. So what? That could not happen in a world where we had more responsibility for our own power usage and like our own power supplies. And go back further, like the lockdowns. So instead of everyone having their own responsibility to learn about this virus and take whatever protective measures they thought was appropriate, we politicians decided to decide for people that this set of rules was what we're going to do here, and this set of rules is what we're going to do here. So you had different rules in different countries, even different rules within different districts of different countries, and this impossible matrix and the enormous resource waste with all the masks and all the vaccines and all the bullshit and people not working and everyone printing money everywhere to make up for it. And what we're seeing now in the aftermath is rising prices everywhere. People seem to be oblivious to the connection between the two. Like, of course, if you print an enormous amount of money, you're going to have all the prices go up. And who's to decide over another man whether it was worth it or not? Like, that's the question. Like, fair according to who? And we ought to. Who are we? Like, if it's not with the individual, if you what's the word? If you delegate that decision to someone who has a monopoly of violence over you, then you get the results that you can predict by knowing about human action, I'd say. And and I don't like that kind of world. I don't like other people framing the problem for me. Like, in a libertarian utopia, I would decide what constitutes a problem or not, and I would be responsible for my reaction to it. Whenever you outsource responsibility, you get less responsible people. I mean, you get what you pay for. If you pay for people to be unproductive and not work and go on sick leave, then you get sick and unproductive people. If you instead let people reap the rewards and reap the fruits of what they sow, and let them keep what they earn, then you incentivize people to be profitable. And base question here is, why should anyone decide for anyone else at all? Like, wouldn't we all be better off if we decided for ourselves? And I think the answer is an obvious yes. I think governments are a net bad for society, not a net good. And therefore, we'd be better off without them. However, I do admit that that's probably utopian. But the correct fight is always to try to make the government's influence over your life a little smaller. Like, that is directionally correct always. Like, the vector is pointing in that direction. Try to reduce the influence of bad people on your life, no matter if it's petty crime, organized crime, mafia stuff, government, or any other corrupt institution. Like, try to avoid it. Build tools around it. Reclaim your freedom.
Now, obviously, it would stand that if you couldn't possibly envision or imagine every satisfying outcome in a world without government, that somehow I've then destroyed the argument. But we'll to throw at least another one that I've heard out there at you before too. It's like, okay. So if I grant you that governments don't really help with war or poverty or health or education or any of these things as well too.
They do help with war.
Fair enough.
They start wars. They are behind all the wars.
Correct. If we're looking at the affirmative position on war, they're incredibly good at it. It seems to be the health of them or something. What about, okay, we make it there, right? We're Bitcoin and Capistan. Things are going a little bit better. Everyone is blissful and peaceful. You've got a wonderful piece of property. It's got a beautiful, beautiful river on it, Knut. And I've got a oil refinery downstream from you. Oh, how could we possibly deal with pollution in this sort of scenario? We're going to bring the government back.
No, you are going to need someone to settle the dispute about who's right and who's wrong. And this is another fallacy of statist fallacy, that we think human beings need coercive measures to make the legal system work. But this is not true. You can have legal firms, private legal firms, resolving conflict for people. You can employ a third party to resolve the conflict for you if you have a conflict with another human being about where the limits of your property really are. In this case, between you and the oil rig downstream of you, like who's violating whose property. And if you have different competing legal firms, they get a reputation, and therefore they are on the free market, and the one with the best reputation for resolving the conflict most fairly will win in the end, and therefore you get a fairer world as a result. Right now, I mean, try to sue the government to see what happens. Like, courts are biased in every single country. It's better in some countries where they separate like the juridical stuff from the legal stuff from the politics stuff and from the other stuff. But still, there is no perfect system today. And as I said, I think a world with no governments in it is sort of utopian. But even today, you can bypass the state sanctioned law and employ a libertarian law firm. There are plenty of those around already, and they will resolve the conflict without resorting to government violence. And I think that's a better solution.
I completely agree. It's funny whenever I get into these conversations too, anything that comes up, it's like, just step back for a second. There is no such thing as a government. That's just a category that we're putting on basically people that we've given monopoly on violence. Like, they're just people. It's like, who will build the roads? People. Who will settle disputes? People. And if you think that the court system is the best way to go about dealing with disputes, it tells me that you've never used the court system.
No, but it's this the question: who would do this and who would do this? That is not. It's not a question. It's an admittance. It is an admittance that you are in love with your capturer. Like, you are suffering from Stockholm syndrome. You are in love with your kidnapper, because for some odd reason you believe that there's a need for people to be forced into behaviors for human society to work. And it's the opposite. Like, we humans have two means of resolving conflict. One is violence and the other is speech. One of them are barbaric and the other is civilized. So the very word civilization comes from not doing the barbaric stuff. So, which is the non-aggression principle. The more voluntary an interaction is, the more civilizational it is, the more civilization building it is. This is what builds civilizations. So it's uncivilized to think that you need a coercive force, a monopoly of violence, someone to meddle with your affairs in order for stuff to work. It is the lion in the cage being afraid of the savannah, and thinking that, you know, the 3 meals per day they get in the cage is what life is all about. And it's not. You're in love with the prison guards. The analogy in the new version of Praxiology, by the way, is the Shawshank Redemption, and how that is a story about low time preference, and how it's a story about hope, and hope as a rational act. Because you have the protagonist who is quietly digging a hole behind a poster in his cell over the span of like 15 years or whatever. I don't remember how long it is in the movie. And then you have this old prisoner who gets released who hangs himself because he cannot take the chaos of the freedom outside. Like, he cannot adapt to that. He's used to being the lion in the cage with the 3 free meals. But and you have the main character's best friend Red, who warns the main character Andy about hope, and that hope is a dangerous thing. But Andy realizes that hope is a rational choice because you're going to die anyway. So you might as well live as a free man and as a free thinker, and not let fear dictate your actions. And that's what I try to live by. And I think it's a beautiful movie, a beautiful metaphor for why freedom is always the better choice. Because as soon as we admit that we're in a prison, we are in a prison. It's only when we admit to ourselves that we cannot do anything about it that we actually can't. This is the story of the Soviet Union, and it existed for 70 years of basically just a continent-wide prison, and then it disappeared overnight because people had hope. People in despair don't emancipate themselves.
I'd never thought of the Shawshank Redemption with that sort of an angle, and that is kind of a wonderful. It's a wonderful illustration to that point, and I completely agree. And funny enough, I'm much more utopian than you. I definitely think that is within the realm, because from my position, if it's the case that Bitcoin cannot be seized, then it's the case that people using Bitcoin cannot be taxed, right? It has to be a voluntary transfer.
Yep.
And if there is no tax, I don't see any difference between the organizations offering other services as any sort of business. I think government does cease to exist if transactions are voluntary.
Yes. Yeah. Then again, I don't believe all transactions will be Bitcoin transactions. I think this will be, look, you can hyper Bitcoinize yourself, but you cannot. Bitcoin is for anyone, not for everyone. And there are many issues to still to solve. Like if you divide 8 billion people by 21 million coins, we get 232,000 sats each. And two transactions per lifetime, if the average lifetime is 80 years, because that's what we have block space for. So we need to solve loads of other issues. Layer 2's Lightning Network and stuff solves them to a certain extent, and just people being less consumers solves other stuff. So it's definitely a better world. To me, the easiest way to grasp what it means is that it reduces the incentive for aggression. Because, like, I can point a gun at your head and say, give me all your Bitcoins, and you can give me a tiny fraction of them, and I have no way of verifying how many you actually had, which means for me as the attacker, it's probably better to befriend you and be nice and play nice and consensually interact with you than to try to extort stuff from you. And this simple shift in the incentive structure of violent behavior, I think that's why Bitcoin is peace. That's why Bitcoin is hope. That's what it changes. It changes everything.
I'm wondering. I'm curious your thoughts on this. I have some ideas about it, but with everything we talked about freedom and hope and Bitcoin, and not only I think is it like a better personal way to live. Like I think it's a much more meaningful way to live as well too. But it seems to have like. I know that since I've adopted these values that my life has improved, right? Why is it that you think that it still seems like the vast majority have Stockholm syndrome, that they're still trapped in that mindset? Wouldn't the incentives lead them to discover that they've been bamboozled?
I mean, if you have state-subsidized media, and if state-subsidized schooling for 12 years in every country, all of that stuff, it's the machine, the brainwashing machine is big, and none of us have ever lived in a libertarian utopia. We've always lived with specific geographical monopolies and violence for as long as civilization has existed. It's always been a mixture of violent interactions and consensual voluntary interactions. So we don't know better. Most people think that this is just a fact of nature, that we have to live in this zero-sum game type of thing. And it takes a lot to finally drop all of those illusions and accept that non-aggression is better than aggression always, and provably so. It's and most people just aren't there yet, because most people don't think about things like this all day. They have yeah, that's interesting. Saw the game last night. Like most people are like that, So, I think that's been true for all ages. People were busy doing whatever they were doing, making money and providing for their families. They don't have time to do philosophical bullshit. It's only us professional international village idiots that have the luxury to do that.
See, and I would even make the case that the incentives were skewed towards basically adhering or trying to play the status game could be very profitable for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And I think that that Bitcoin really was an orange pill in the sense that like it was the first time that your Austrian values and beliefs could be hugely profitable for you when applied.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't necessarily call them Austrian values. It's more like, a lower time preference is all of a sudden worth it. And it was always worth it. It was just that bit of information was only available to the people who figured it out, and those were few. And we have been incentivized to do what the government says, because of subsidies and taxes and all of this stuff. Like, we've been incentivized. People show me the incentives and I show you the outcome. So people are incentivized. People who are incentivized to not know something. But like, what's the quote? The Upton Sinclair quote. Like, it's very hard to convince a man of an idea if his livelihood depends on
not knowing
him
it or
having
not
that
understanding
belief.
it.
So that explains a lot, I think.
No, I completely agree. And the other one too is even just the the entire education system, both from like high school even through university, is all a compliance
indoctrination system. Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
It teaches you to be obedient more than anything else, and not to question, which is the opposite of the scientific method, where you ought to question everything. I mean, science has gotten a bad name now because of the science, which is avoid the science and do actual science. Like this, it's super simple. No, absolutely. Education is not free. It's tax funded, and it also, like, imagine how aliens would see humanity. Like, why are they giving their kids away for 5 hours a day to a kidnapper for 12 years and doing it seemingly voluntarily?
And when they come out of it, they have no economic value, right? So there's like a reward at the end of it.
No, no, it's super strange when you see it like that. And it's hard to deprogram people when it's something that everyone does. Like, most people don't like to be the black sheep of the flock or the orange sheep, stand out too much. They like to keep their opinions and ideas about the world confined into this whatever the normalcy box there is. They want to be normal, perceived as normal by others.
We're dogs, not cats, and for most people, stepping out and even going back to the compliance training too, right? We've almost elevated obedience, right, and social approval as like a higher value rather than like leadership or creativity. And even one of the things I find most frustrating is entrepreneurs are not venerated anymore, right? Like, these people are literally serving you, but we look at them as evil capitalists or something.
Yeah, and it's all skewed. It's sad. I mean, Daniel Prince put a sentence in one of my books, or I stole it from him because I thought it was so great. If you were a straight A student, you excelled at being average. Yeah, I love that.
I completely agree. Speaking of the books too, okay, so I've gone through the previous iteration of Praxiology. And I know we had the end chapter on who will build the roads, but what else did you add to the new book?
I added 2 more chapters, and one is called Natural Law, and the other is called Punishment. So they follow on to the Argumentation chapter. So it's Argumentation, which is now chapter 18. This was the last but one chapter in the previous edition. And then it's Natural Law, Punishment, What About the Roads, and then the conclusion chapter. So yeah, I tried to talk about other things than economics that the science of human action can also understanding of human action can also help you with. And natural law is one of those that I like a lot, like the difference between legal and lawful. Like, legal is imposed from above, and lawful is just what natural law tells you is okay and not. Is respecting property rights. So there's a lot to explore there. Essentially, and I do in the book.
I would say in the natural law, we're basically starting from the premise that, like, humans act, I have control over my body, therefore I have ownership over my body, and then just kind of building out a framework from there.
Yeah, building a framework around the understanding that we have 2 means of resolving conflict, and if we want to avoid the violent one, we should use the communication one, and like everything derived from there, basically. In my opinion, argumentation ethics and natural law is as close as a science will ever get to derive an ought from an is. arguably you can't derive an ought from an is, but I think you can derive an ought not.
See, okay, interesting. Yeah, because I was gonna say, for me, where I get hung up on that one, or where I think there's some value, is along the lines of there's an axiomatic presupposition that you ought to be correct, therefore you can get an ought from an is.
That is not necessary, because argumentation ethics say that it's from the premise of we own our own body, and the very act of arguing with someone else presupposes that if you start arguing about something, you show the other person that you believe argumentation to be a suitable conflict resolving tool. So as soon as you stop arguing and you do something against the whatever consensus there is in the argument. So if you're arguing about the legality of a tax with the taxman, and the taxman, you can agree and you can make irrefutable arguments and blah blah blah, and he can even agree with you. But as soon as he resorts to violence, anyway, it's not an argument anymore. It's just bullying the other person. So it's mockery. It goes from argumentation to mockery. So it's really just setting the boundaries for what argumentation is. And we come to different truths about like truth in the praxeological sense or truthfulness is consensual. So it doesn't matter how objectively true something is from the argumentation ethics perspective. If we agree that this is the way to go forward, then that becomes the most truthful alternative. Any violent way of trying to stop that is simply less truthful from the angle of the argumentation as a conflict resolving tool. This is a hard, convoluted way to say simple things. But even if a society agrees, all agrees that 2 + 2 = 5, then that is the way they have chosen to operate in and in nature, and their survivability will depend on that truth conclusion they came to. Just as another society who decides this or that, or about climate change, for instance, maybe the society that decides it's not a problem all die, and maybe the society that does all survive. Or it's the other way around. It doesn't really matter to the ethics of argumentation what the actual validity of a statement is. What matters is that we must use consensual interactions, argumentation, to get to the point of the truth. But the actual validity is not a part of this argument about argumentation at all.
Okay,
that makes.
Yes. Okay. So stepping back from the argumentation ethics, man, I'm going out in like the philosophy curve here. Let's see how I can pull this off. It's something along the lines of, and I'll see if I can articulate it correctly. So when you if you're to make an argument about, like self-ownership, you are presupposing, because you're the one actually speaking, right? In the sense that if I'm going to even try to argue against self-ownership, I can't, because the act of doing so is having control over my own body.
Yep.
Right. So if I was going to argue with you with regards to say that you cannot get an ought from an is, the presupposition is that I ought to that you ought to be accurate in your statements and that you were wrong. So the act of me arguing with you that you cannot get an ought from an is based on an ought to begin with. Does that make sense?
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful.
Okay.
I'm going to watch this again and like repeat that and ponder.
It's almost like I wonder,
because that's fantastic. I love it.
It's the it's almost like I remember, was it Jeff Booth? I remember someone talking about AI, and they were referring to that, like, one of the hardest things to do is that the AI systems can't look at everything. It has to pick what to choose.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there's something even like, and it kind of speaks to humans act, right? But in order to act, we have to filter, which meant there have to be an underlying choice or framework for choosing to begin with.
Yes,
and that means
utility at the margin.
Right. So then there has to be a fundamental, like, preferred value, meaning like there ought to be a direction. Like you can't do it without direction, which means there's some things in the base of acting.
The direction is presupposed, I guess, and it has to be. But I think maybe what we're fishing for is that we can scientifically deductively reason ourselves to the position that there ought to be an ought, but we cannot say what the ought is.
But that's actually a very good way of phrasing it. There ought to be an ought.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I love it.
I got to say, Knut, the only thing that would make this has been absolutely fun for me, by the way. The only thing that would make this better is if we were in a pub for beers and a couple pints and go for
I agree.
A good long time here.
Yes.
Before we wrap things up too, so I really appreciate you humoring me and having fun with those conversations, but we barely touched on everything that you're working on right now. So we have the Praxiology, we have the new chapters coming out. What else are you and Luke doing? What's exciting? What's on the horizon, pal?
No, we keep on doing the Bitcoin Infinity show, formerly the Freedom Footprint show, and we have also the Bitcoin Infinity Academy, which is a huge project. I decided to release all my books for free, which I think anyone hating intellectual property and the concept of it should do, like an open source all the books. But I wanted to do it slightly differently. So this is how the Academy started. During Bitcoin Atlantis, on a fancy cocktail party on top of a fancy hotel, I ran into Miljan from Primal, and he said, "You're Knut, right? Yeah, you broke my Nostr client." I broke Nostr? Like, what was that? And that was me, because I had posted the entirety of Sovereignty through Mathematics, my first book, as a single note, which their service couldn't take. So I broke Primal for a while. So achievement unlocked. But then I thought about that. Maybe there's a better way of doing this and still utilizing Nostr, because I love that Nostr exists. Nostr is a bit of a clusterfuck, but I still love the idea. So why don't I release all the books chapter by chapter on Nostr? And then we had a couple of conversations with a couple of other people about how to best do this. And I got the suggestion that, release it all for free, but try to monetize it somehow. Some people will want to like fund this. So we realized that, okay, we're going to do it like this. We're going to turn every chapter, we're going to post one a week from all of the books, one by one, and turn each book into a course where Luke and I talk about a specific chapter for an hour once a week. And also, there's a membership thing. So you can join a Telegram group where you can post questions and get a monthly call with me and Luke and talk to us and participate in the making of this thing. So there's a participatory aspect to it. So that's what it becomes. That's the Bitcoin Infinity Academy. We will release a chapter per week, with some breaks, like there's a small summer break and probably a break over Christmas or something. But we're nearing the end of Sovereignty Through Mathematics, my first book. On Infinity Day, 21st of August, we'll start the middle one there, Bitcoin Independence Reimagined, which has a new cover, newly edited, and we'll do that one. And
who did the artwork, by the way? The revised artwork?
Well, me and Luke did.
Oh, beautiful!
Yeah, so we're do it yourself type of people. So we're doing everything ourselves here, and I'm so happy I found him, because he's the perfect match. Like, he's the Sharon to my Aussie, and so it's organized and industrious, that. Where I'm creative and
you'd could have gone like Tommy Iommi or something too. You'd have to make it Sharon.
Yeah, or I should say the Tony to my Aussie, because that's more of a compliment, I think. Or people don't realize how much of a compliment the Sharon to my Aussie it really is.
That's fair.
Because she's under it. Anyway, so we're doing this, and the show is sponsored by Plan B and Bitbox. The Academy is. The other show is sponsored by the Bitcoin Advisor and Stampseed and Bitbox. But the Academy is the main sponsor is Plan B. So we're planning on, that's also one of the reasons why I made the Praxiology book a bit more ambitious, because I'm going to Lugano now in June and also in July to give lectures about Praxiology for the Plan B network, and turning the whole thing into a proper online course via the Plan B network. So I'm super happy to be finally collaborating with one of my dearest friends and idols in Bitcoin, Giacomo Zucco, who I just love. So very excited to be on board that particular train.
When you started writing, when you were still on ships, did you ever think you'd get here?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I'm still pinching myself. We have a saying like the surreal doesn't end, and that's definitely true for everything that's happened here. Like the journey I've been on here for the last decade has been simply mind blowing. Stuff I never expected out of life, and now I'm making a living writing books and talking about them. Like I couldn't ask for more. Really, it's insane. So
all right.
very happy.
I got two more things I got to slip in there quick then.
Yeah.
First and foremost,
I'm just going to direct people to the guys. So you join the academy by going to geyser.fund/projects/infinity. That's where you find all the info about the academy, and you can get signed books and whatnot and join the different tiers of membership. So please check it out.
Beautiful. One more. Obviously, you're such a prolific writer. There's going to be another book that's hiding out somewhere in the back of your head. Has anything been started? Do we have any ideas?
Yes, I do have ideas. And there is a project that I do not really want to talk about. Like, I want to keep it a secret.
Totally fine. Totally fine. Yeah. We'll leave that one for a surprise for later.
I think so. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Right now, we're just ticking off all the boxes and doing all the things. There's so much that needed to be done. And all the books are the best they can be, and I'm super proud of them. And especially now, I have recency bias, but the new Praxiology book, I think you're going to love it. It's thicker, it's more readable, it's just better in every single way. And I think the cover is the best one we've done so far too, with the Lady Justice. So check that out. BitcoinInfinity.com or BitcoinInfinityStore.com. There you'll find all the books if you want to buy them for sats. Otherwise, they're available on Amazon.
Beautiful. So we got the Bitcoin Infinity Store, we have the Bitcoin Academy, which is on Geyser. And where else can people follow you if they want to get more of your work and see what you're up to?
My main platform is still X or Twitter, so that's at Knut Svanholm is my handle there, and that's where I post basically everything. You can also follow the Bitcoin Infinity Show. We have a social media manager now doing fantastic work and great posts from there. There's a Mises Mondays thing, for instance, where you can learn some Misesian knowledge every Monday. So looking forward to continuing with that and doing all of this. Like, Bitcoiners are incentivized to help one another, right? We all win if we collaborate, because we all want number go up, and the success of a Bitcoiner is the success of Bitcoin. And we're trying to lean into that as much as possible and just do as many collaborations with the people we align with as absolutely humanly possible. The main reason I'm doing the show is that I really want to keep these people as friends, because I love having these conversations with these fantastic people. So I don't really care about viewer numbers or anything. I just want to have honest conversations with the most interesting people on the planet. That's why I'm in this.
If you enjoyed this conversation with Knut Svanholm, that means you're also a libertarian nerd, so please do like, share, and subscribe, and check out the previous conversation with Gary Cardone.